Hey, everybody. So, the January 6th committee has been doing a great job at focusing on Donald Trump. And Donald Trump should be focused on because he is the leader of the cult that is in the process of taking over America. So, making sure that the cult leader has been diminished, imprisoned, exposed is incredibly important. However, there's a lot missing from the committee so far. And I think the biggest oversight is that they haven't mentioned foreign interference at all from anyone. And I understand that. That complicates things. It brings up all kinds of issues. But we're really going after the domestic terrorists who did this. But if we don't recognize that the actual ideology that the cult and the people who lead it are following is based on Russian imperialism, we won't be able to fight it. So what I'm going to do is show you how Mike Flynn has been using Putin's brain, literally a guy named Putin's brain, as a blueprint for destroying American and ultimately global liberal democracy. That is their plan. So I've been following this guy for 2 years. He's the worst traitor in American history. He's a genocidal, psychopathic maniac, but he is not crazy. And the disinformation out there that somehow this guy's just some wackadoodle general out there, kicking up smoke is not only counterproductive, but it's suicidal. Now, the guy that he's following is this dude, Alexander Dugin. Putin's brain is what he's called. One of the most dangerous fascist white supremacists on earth. He believes that all of Europe and all of Asia should come under Russian rule and that Moscow should be the third Rome. That is the plan. That is Duginism, Eurasianism. That's the plan that Mike Flynn is following, and I will show you how. To give you an idea about Dugin, Dugin founded the National Bolshevik Party. So the red logo is the logo of the Bolshevik Party with a hammer and sickle in the middle. And the rest of it is just the German Nazi eagle. 2 heads instead of 1 for some reason. But he's literally a Nazi Bolshevik. He wants the worst of Hitler and Stalin. That's who this guy is. That's who's directing this insurgency, ultimately, is the architect for Russian imperialism. So I apologize for this image, but I had to get it out of my head, and you're welcome. This is Mike Flynn and Alexander Dugin. This is the monster we're fighting. This is it. This is the monster that helped almost destroy democracy last year and is on the way to doing it again. To give you an idea of how far this has gone and how blind we are, I went to rumble.com, which is Peter Thiel's video website, and on the front page, this is on the front page, an account that literally just promotes Vladimir Putin all day long with Tucker Carlson on the front page of a very, very large social media video network. And we're just okay with this. Doesn't get better. So let's start here. So I did a whole video on this story in the Atlantic, but he is compounding it with interviews and running around desperately trying to make Mike Flynn look like he's just crazy. That it's not, there's no broader importance to his actions. That really appears to be the goal. Check this out.
There is one theory that some of his friends put forward that maybe he did always have some of the crazy in him, that he was carried along by the strictures of military life and by a very strong and able commander in Stanley McChrystal. And so there was less opportunity for expression of that aspect of his personality. I think there may be some little piece of that that's true. In fact, of the 5 or so theories that people offered me for what happened to Michael Flynn, I think there's some truth probably in all of them. Another one is that the trauma of being fired as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and then the subsequent trauma of being charged with lying to the FBI.
I can't do it anymore. Trauma. Mike Flynn had trauma for getting fired by Obama for assisting Vladimir Putin? Seriously? Here's Mike Flynn talking about how Mike Flynn has taken over lots of countries.
I spent my life in service to this country. I fought. I'll say, keep the applause down, okay? Whatever. I don't need that. I don't need it. What we need is we really need to understand what it is that we're up against. You know, coming in this morning, I'm thinking about all the different things that I've been involved in as a military professional, all of the planning to go take over countries, all of the places around the world that I've been. And trust me when I say this, that I have planned for and I have executed the takeover of countries around the world.
Now, why would he say that? Because he's telling his audience, he's telling his cult that that's what he's doing. And he's warning everybody else. It's a threat. I've taken over countries. The whole context of this is what's wrong with America. So, who is Alexander Dugin? He's Putin's brain, a philosopher who pushes the fourth political theory, or Eurasianism, or a multipolar world. He puts all of these terms around it. It's all the same fascist idea that liberal democracy is failed, and that what needs to be put in place is an authoritarian structure that includes Vladimir Putin being in charge of all of Europe, all of Asia, with Moscow as the third Rome. So you see here, Alexander Dugin and the philosophy behind Putin's invasion of Crimea. Now, it's not surprising, but I bring that up for a reason. Because Mike Flynn appears to have gotten fired not for his insane Islamophobic comments, but because he did not tell the U.S. government, as head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, that Vladimir Putin was taking over Crimea. Putin did it with Spetsnaz soldiers, the little green men who went in there. Like Flynn knew. Didn't fucking tell anybody. In 2013, a year before this, Mike Flynn is the only American to visit GRU headquarters. You think he got the plan? That he knew Crimea was going to get taken over? And maybe advise them on how to do it so that he could let it happen? Could be. Year later, here's Alexander Dugin.
And this time, the confrontation between the
He's
West
speaking to
and
America.
the Russia, the Putin's Russia, is the confrontation between the post-modernity and post-human society advancing and the human society, traditional society, conservative society. There are two Weltanschauungen, two visions of the world, and not only two societies, two countries, two competing geopolitical bodies. It's something deeper than that. And I think that in United States of America, that there should be some groups of people that understand the seriousness of this challenge, and they are going to react against that, defending American values, defending American identity, defending American tradition, not Russian. You could hate us, you could be indifferent toward Russians, but that is secondary. That is no problem to be pro-Putin, support Putin, or to be against him. What is much more important to defend American identity, Christian identity, ethnic identity, cultural identity, sexual identity, or to be on the other side, on the side of the liberal globalist elites that now is approaching these elites to the last stage of creating of the world government that will enslave everybody on the earth. Not
So, 2015, July 1st, speaking to the American people, laying out QAnon. The globalist elites are taking over the earth, and you have to jump in and save it. And guess who he jumped on board right away? Mr. Donald Trump. As we'll see, Mr. Dugin was big fan. So let's now fast forward to last week and see what the man.
Хотел бы обратить внимание. Они должны были бы понять, что уже проиграли с самого начала нашей специальной военной операции, потому что ее начало означает и начало кардинального слома миропорядка по-американски. Это начало перехода от либерально-глобалистского американского эгоцентризма к действительно многополярному миру. Миру, основанному не на придуманных кем-то для себя эгоистических правилах, за которыми нет ничего, кроме как...
So, you can see all the same words, right? Liberal, globalist, hegemony, American world order. It's coming directly from Putin, from Dugin. Dugin is laying out the plan. Putin is executing it, and his lieutenant in charge of dismantling America is Michael T. Flynn. Here's Dugin recently saying the unipolar world is coming to an end. Talking about the special operation in Ukraine as opposed to the atrocities committed on babies. To give you another idea of Dugin, this is trad, the characteristic traditionalist garb, where they really believe that the natural state of the human race is a bunch of white people running around in frocks and, loincloths and shit. They want to roll back the world hundreds of years so that they can place themselves at the top. They're the globalist elites. Literally. Which is why they use the words. So the most depressing thing is that we're just okay with straight up enemy foreign propaganda in the middle of what amounts to World War III. Here's Rumble. This is just, you search for Putin, it's 100% positive. Calling out the Great Reset. Where are we going to see the Great Reset? Oh, yeah. Great Awakening, QAnon versus the Great Reset.
That picture on, if you don't mind.
Okay. You want to go to the header? Yeah, go to the header.
Yeah. We're facing this crowd right here on the right. I mean, these people, George Soros just dropped in one of the last primaries that we had in Pennsylvania. They dropped like, I think the number was $300 million in one state. That's why we have to have millions, but it's millions of us. That's what we need. We need millions of us because we can't fight the billions of dollars. And you know what? I don't care. I don't want to. What I want them to know is that there's tens of millions of us. And we are not going to relent. We are not going to give this country up to a bunch of socialists. I won't go Irish on you. Whatever.
All right, Devin, I think we're ready for that video.
So there's Mike Flynn using the same words that Hitler used, that Dugin uses, a bunch of liberals, a bunch of socialists, a bunch of communists, right? That's the lie. That is the new big lie. That there is a great reset, which translates to the great replacement. That's what it means. They're accusing liberals and Jews and anyone who isn't a straight white man they want us all dead. They don't want us here. They want women suppressed. Here's the book that Clay Clark, who runs those conferences, wrote. Notice the color and the blue color and the white lettering. It's called The Great Reset versus the Great Awakening. And here's Alexander Dugin's book, The Great Awakening versus the Great Reset. As you saw, the conference is named literally word for word after this book. And as you can see, all of the same stuff. Showdown of apocalyptic proportions, righteous anger, the Antichrist and his Soros-backed minions of insidious degeneracy and evil. Right? Strangling tentacles of hysterical trans and homosexuals, treacherous anti-white agitators, and murderous Black Lives Matters, grifters, and terrorists. But this is the most important one. Dugin calls upon the inhabitants of the heartland to relentlessly attack on all theoretical and practical fronts the global elites of the coastlands who try to impose their perverse anti-human ideals by ruthlessly eradicating the long-standing cultures and traditions of all people in the world. It's just incredible. This guy, who Mike Flynn is advertising all day long, on all his videos, on all his conferences, is telling the inhabitants of the heartland to relentlessly attack the global elites on the coastlands. It is a direct call to civil war in America, being promoted by a 3-star general. They're working together. They have been for a long time. Look here, in his new book, The Great Awakening. How do they define the Great Awakening? This slogan was first put forth by American anti-globalists, such as the host of InfoWars, Alex Jones. Also QAnon activists. That's so sweet. They're activists, you see. Because that was always the point. By activists, I mean infiltrators, trolls, traumatizer, people who reject their family and friends and get submerged in a world of fascist hate. That's what a QAnon activist is. Here's the interview with Alex Jones. One of the liberal politicians criticized Putin for invading Ukraine, but she couldn't even remember the exact name of the country. So therefore, it doesn't matter, right? Alex Jones is a good example of how globalists understand the world, says Alexander Dugin. Here they are, sitting together a month before QAnon started. Oh, forgive me, no, this is February. So, 9 months before QAnon started. Right before QAnon was this operation to attempt to destroy H.R. McMaster, and Project Veritas sent honeypots in to try and, get sexual compromise on him. He was relentlessly attacked. And the reason is because he was against Mike Flynn, helped get him fired. He helped get Ezra Cohen-Watnick and Rich Higgins, who are on the National Security Council, fired as well. And so when that happened, he was seen as the enemy. By Q, went after McMaster constantly, but also Alexander Dugin, for some reason, is super mad at McMaster. Isn't that weird? Russian bots and trolls have helped spread the Fire McMaster Twitter campaigns. Isn't that odd?
Media that our government refuses to tell you. And this is one of these people. And all you have to do is go listen to him. And you're going to listen to a guy like this and you're going to get sick to your stomach. You're going to get sick to your stomach. But these are the type of people in history. These are the type of people that have existed in history, that have been advisors to dictators. To dictators. In the last 100 years, and I always remind people about this, in the last 100 years, so 1920, back to 1920, 60 million people were killed by Stalin, who had advisors like this. 6 million Jews and 20 million people were killed by Hitler, who had advisors like this. And one of his advisors was a guy named Joseph Goebbels. Pol Pot from Southeast Asia. The numbers...
So, just an incredible feat of projection. Right below him and right behind him at the giant sign that he's pointing at is Alexander Dugin, the most racist, terrifying, theocratic fascist on earth, other than Mike Flynn. Again, in Dugin's book. Can we be clear here? Russia's mission to be at the forefront of the Great Awakening. Does that seem pretty clear to everybody? So, here's how this book gets situated. It's published by Arctos Media, which all it does is post neo-Nazi propaganda. That's it. There it is sitting right here. The Western past and the perversion of normality and the decline of the West. Let's look at the next page here. Here's multipolar. You've heard that. Well, let's take a look at this one. So here's a typical one. Traitors and Heroes. Boy, it's some kind of World War I history novel. Let's take a look. Like the Jews of yore, the Germans of Sombart's time are universally despised because of their insistence on their uniqueness. Sombart argues that Germans should justifiably be proud of their superiority and as a result need not feel shame looking down on other peoples. This is the book sitting right next to Alexander Dugin's. These are Nazis. Mike Flynn is a Nazi.
I really do believe we are on a mission from God. I really do believe that. But I want to make sure we understand this. And I'm just going to be clear, and I want you to write this down somewhere in your book of thoughts today. If we lose, you will hang.
It's true.
Who am I talking to? Just you and me and you and us. Because the first thing they do in a communist regime is they round up true believers, which General Flynn said, Clay Clark, you're a true believer, read the book. And I read the book and I go, I agree. It's the first time we met. And they will kill you. That's what they do. So I told my wife, I have time. I have an amazing amount of time now to fight this because if we don't win, they will hang us. Because I will never
So Clay Clark, in my opinion, is a believer. He believes that. He believes that his wife and him and his family is going to get murdered if Mike Flynn's plan, and Clay Clark knows it, he's one of the biggest propagandists Flynn has, pushing the insane, traumatic nonsense that has ended up brainwashing tens of millions of Americans. He's out here saying they're going to kill us. If people believe that, if they really believe that they're going to die, if they don't win, what do you think they're going to do? That's always been the plan. It's always been Bannon's plan, right? He said it out loud. I want to dismantle the administrative state. He constantly traffics in traditionalist Catholicism, which is infested, frankly, with white supremacists like Dugin, who want to go back to the olden days where, women wore flowers in their hair to church and no shoes in the kitchen. Bannon is one of Dugin's biggest proponents on it, and one of Mike Flynn's biggest proponents on it. These are not coincidences. These people are all following the same plan. So, Mike Flynn, as soon as he was acting National Security Advisor, he started executing the plan. He met with the Nazi Party in Austria. And a couple weeks later, signed a cooperation agreement with Russia. Isn't that weird? And Mike Flynn meets with the Nazi Party, and then the Nazi Party does a deal with Putin. one of the things that's not as well understood about Duginism and about Eurasianism is the importance of Turkey. It is incredibly important, and Putin's relationship to Erdogan is, in my opinion, misunderstood. Erdogan is fully on board this plan. He is fully on Putin's team. Always has been. So you can see here, Dugin is the guy that Putin sent over to the parliament to push for a Russian alliance. This is a few days after the 2016 election. Now, what does this have to do with Mike Flynn? Well, Mike Flynn got paid over $500,000 by the Turks in order to steal the election, for one thing. $28,000 of it went to Brian McCauley, who was a former FBI agent who backed up the need to reopen Hillary's emails, which cost her the election. Flynn paid $28,000. Documented. From his Flynn Intel group, who's working with the guy who's Dugin's right-hand man, Pekin.
And I always tell people that you cannot, a pastor, a priest, they cannot stand there at the pulpit, nowhere else in the world, they cannot stand there at the pulpit and preach the Bible without the United States Constitution. And what they need to be doing is they need to be talking about the Constitution from the pulpit as much as the Bible.
What he's saying is the Constitution should be preaching the Bible. He is desperately trying to destroy the separation of church and state, right? That's this whole project. Taking over the Supreme Court is all about separating church and state. It's about the church dictating to the people what their morals should be and who should control their bodies.
They have to do that. We have to remind this country, we have to remind every single one of us why the Constitution was written. What is the beauty of that document? What is the beauty of the Declaration of Independence? What is the beauty of the Bill of Rights? It all has found its foundation in the Bible. All you have to do is read the history, read the Federalist Papers. Like 75–80% of our Constitution, of our way of life in this country, is based on biblical principles.
Lies, lies, lies. Yes, they were Christians. The whole point was to separate church and state. He's just lying in the project to create this civil war here. The Great Awakening, QAnon versus the Great Reset, everybody else. The heartland versus the coastlands. Listen to him. He is the general of Putin's war. Flynn has built a fifth column inside of the United States, in government, in law enforcement, through constitutional sheriffs, through religion, through organizations like the CNP. We have got to stop calling this guy crazy and start calling him the most dangerous man in America and start putting him in fucking prison.
That's what pastors need to be doing. That's what a pastor does when they're leading their flock, and not standing there and pretending like they know a lot of verses in the Bible, which I don't. All I know is that they can't preach that without that thing called the United States Constitution. And that's what we have to remind ourselves. The third thing, and I'll shut up, the third thing has to do with children. Children. We have got to grab hold of the children in this country. And when I say children, I'm not talking about elementary school, not just them, I'm not talking about the babies, I'm talking about young adults. We've got to corral them, get them in a headlock, and drag them off into what my mom used to call forced family fun.
Yeah, indoctrination, right? That's what he's talking about. Indoctrinate your kids into this fascism. Indoctrinate them into this authoritarianism. Don't believe your lying eyes. Dugin, Bannon, Flynn, Prince, Teal, Stone. They're all working on this same plan. They all know what the plan is. And they're pushing as hard as they can. Here's Breitbart in March, when his book comes out, right? When Mike Flynn starts his tour, all at the same time in March. Putin's brain, Alexander Dugin, calls Russian war in Ukraine fights against American hegemony. Remember that word from Putin's speech last week?
I mean, God help us, anybody that gets a vaccine for their children, you know, God help you. So, I could go on and on. This is the most consequential moment in U.S. history that we are in right now. The destiny of America is going to be based upon whatever you decide to do from here on out, not what you did in the past. Not what you did in the past. From what you decide to do when you walk out that door tonight or tomorrow if you spend the whole weekend with us. Because whatever we were doing, and I'm being overly general a bit, whatever we were doing, it wasn't working, it's not working. So now we have to do more, and we've got to figure out how do we do it. People always ask, what more can we do? What more can we do? And that's why we have these Reawaken America events that Clay so masterfully puts on. We have these because this is to reawaken us. This is to say, hey, look, we will go the way of the wolves, so to speak, if we're not careful.
Talking about the kids, telling his flock that they're being reawakened, right? That they're being given secret information that nobody else has. What they're doing is being indoctrinated into a cult using coercive, traumatic propaganda. Mike Flynn is an expert at it. He watched how ISIS and Al-Qaeda radicalized their combatants, their terrorists. He wrote a paper in 2010 saying, hey, we should bring that over here. Read it yourself. Here's Alexander Dugin on the 9th of January, 2021. Great awakening. The future starts now. Look, he loves it. Loved it. It was his birthday, right? Our name is Ashley Babbitt. Who became a martyr, right? No, Alexander Dugin, your name is not Ashley Babbitt. And spell her name right, for fuck's sake.
That our nation, you know, it's like I'm standing with my toes over the edge, okay? And our nation is at that point. This is the most consequential moment in U.S. history. I mean, much greater than our founding, much greater than any other war that we've been involved in, to include the Civil War. Okay, because it's different. It's a different thing that we are now facing. It is a different type of enemy. It is a domestic enemy, and they have ideological backing from foreign adversaries. And there's no questions about that. It's not a conspiracy theory. So our nation right now, because of many of the decisions that we...
So you heard him, right? Under the backing of foreign nationals. You know? Yes, Mike Flynn, as always, projecting everything he's doing onto everybody else. So, needless to say that Russia has been helping to push the pro-life propaganda and pro-life movement in the right wing for nearly 50 years. And this guy can't help but bring up the fact, this is on Dugin's website, with the recent resignation of Mike Flynn over failing to disclose conversations he had with Russian counterparts regarding sanctions on their nation, one thing that can be lost among Western Christians is the profound moral solidarity that we share with the Russians. Is that right, Steve? One of the things that Flynn has been doing for a couple of years now, along with Steve Bannon, is using Catholic terrorists. I'm just going to say it. Eric Prince is a Knight of Malta, which the Order of Malta is an extremely dangerous fascist arm of the Catholic Church that is still running the Crusades against Muslims from 1,000 years ago. And Mike Flynn was his partner in that project in Afghanistan and Iraq. Carlo Vigano is one of the most pernicious and dangerous religious figures, if you can even call him that. He's literally just QAnon now. Q, one of the last posts, Q posted Carlo Vigano, who is nothing more than a Russian propagandist. And an hour later, Mike Flynn posted the same thing. The reason for this is because they're all the same. Here's Vigano praying to Saint Michael the Archangel. I showed a prayer recently of Mike Flynn leading a church in an occult prayer. That prayer was to Saint Michael the Archangel. Here's Vigano, a couple weeks after the insurrection, pushing Mike Flynn.
So I got to know Archbishop Vigano. He is in exile over in Sicily. We asked him to do a video because he's a very powerful guy. He came into my life probably a year and a half ago, before the elections and all that, to speaking to each other quite often, you know, as you do with anybody who you see as a mentor or a counselor. And we have to listen to all kinds of voices. This is one of them.
Praise be Jesus Christ. General Michael Flynn asked me to speak with a message for your rally and encourage you in this reawakening of consciences. The threat of a third world war is weighing on all of us. They have told that President Putin invaded Ukraine to support his expansionist ambitions, but in reality, the main purpose of Russia's military operation is to prevent the aggression of the deep state and NATO. Putin is fighting against the same globalist.
Did you hear the audience clapping? That's an American audience.
Elite that hold us all hostage. The Russian ambassador to the United Nations, he declared that Donald Trump is the legitimate president of the United States, and that the election was falsified with the complicity of the European nations using the Dominion apparatus. It is not the Ukrainian people who are persecuting their Russian brothers, but a puppet government supported by neo-Nazi military militias, which today find itself with a cocaine-addicted president.
You get the idea, right? Mike Flynn just introduced this guy. Right there, that guy is speaking to an American audience of largely old boomers, old white people, who are getting brain fucked by this guy who used to be the top Catholic in the United States. This is not a crazy guy. He doesn't believe any of this shit. But he knows a fascist when he sees one, and he knows a propagandist when he sees one, and he knows how to use them. Here's Dugin in June 2016.
They haven't been given their due rights process yet. I mean, many of them. And there are others across this country that are in that same category. The reason why they go after those of us is because way back home. And you sit there Monday and Tuesday, and I want you to contemplate and think about what it is that we need to be doing, what it is that you need to be doing. Like I said earlier, the destiny of this country won't be decided by me. It's not going to be decided by Washington, D.C. The destiny of America will be decided by what path you choose to walk upon when you go out that door tonight. Because whatever you were doing in the past, whatever we've been doing, it's placed us here. It's placed us right here at the edge. And trust me, we have a lot going for us. The reason why they go after people like Dr. Gold, the reason why they go after people like me, I mean, and many others, the folks that are sitting in jail who haven't seen the light of day, haven't seen a judge, and haven't been accused of anything yet. They haven't been given their due rights process yet.
There it is. Defending his own digital soldiers who went to the Capitol. This is the guy who made that happen. And he's upset that they're in jail for it. Just going to play a little bit of this. Here is Mike Flynn watching an American patriot who went to Ukraine to fight for democracy and wishing death on him.
That clip actually, and I just find that fascinating. I mean, you know what? War is not fair, and and is he supposed to be a journalist that's reporting the news, or is he out there trying to make the news? What kind of ploy is that? And frankly, you know, I hope that he's being watched by the good Lord, because he's in a very dangerous place. The fact that he's dressed like that, he could be killed soon. So, all of the reporting coming out of Eastern Europe right now, out of Ukraine, it's really, really difficult to believe anybody. I mean, you can who's shooting who's killing who, all those different things. I do believe that, in fact,
yes, it's very difficult to figure out who's killing who. What? Can we just agree now that this man works for Putin and he is following Alexander Dugin's plan? Last clip.
This encirclement of Kiev, which I see as a means to choke off the command and control of whatever forces Ukraine is using in this Azov group that's popped up everybody needs to go look at who this Azov group is and what
In
they
the
represent,
East.
what their background is.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I don't see this as, I really don't. I mean, I don't see this as Putin trying to take over Ukraine. I think he's got very limited objectives. He's going to choke off the.
So here's Mike Flynn negotiating on behalf of Putin, saying, oh, he just needs this much territory. Just give him that. It'll be fine. Don't worry. Just relax. So I'll close out in a minute. But I just have to say to as many people as possible that don't be afraid to point the obvious out. There's a spell on the media and apparently on Congress. It doesn't allow us to see what's fucking in front of us, which is that this man and this man have combined forces with a bunch of Nazis to cause civil war in the United States of America and ultimately destroy global liberal democracy. Not on our watch. Arrest Mike Flynn.